The military gave Sergeant Danny Webb a Bronze Star for what happened in Kandahar. I watched him accept it on the firebase, his face blank, jaw tight. Everyone clapped. I didn't. Because 3 weeks earlier, I watched Danny fire a javelin missile into a vehicle convoy. Our vehicle convoy. 4th Platoon, Bravo Company. 6 guys I'd shared meals with, complained about the heat with, traded stories about home with. And when the smoke cleared, they were gone. The official report said insurgents, enemy contact, hostile fire. I knew different, and I couldn't figure out why everyone was pretending it never happened. My name's Marcus Chen. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a forward observer with the 101st Airborne. This happened during my last rotation, spring of 2012. I'd been in country 8 months, seen enough to know when something didn't add up. The day it happened started normal enough. We were running concurrent patrols out of FOB Wilderness in Kandahar province. My unit, 3rd Platoon, was providing overwatch from a ridgeline about 2 clicks north of Highway 1. 4th Platoon was running a supply convoy from Kandahar City back to base. Standard route, they'd done it maybe 50 times. I was with Danny on that ridge. He was our anti-armor specialist, which meant he carried the javelin and the responsibility that came with it. We'd been friends since basic training. He was the guy who'd covered for me when I overslept, who'd listened when I got the letter saying my girlfriend back home was done waiting, who'd shared his mom's care packages when mine stopped coming. The morning was clear. You could see for miles across that desert, dust and rock and those scattered compounds with their high walls. Radio chatter was light. Everything felt routine. Then Danny stiffened beside me. He was scanning through the javelin's sight. Got movement on the highway. Convoy heading north. I pulled up my spotting scope. 3 vehicles, 2 Humvees and a supply truck between them. Standard configuration. That's 4th Platoon. They're early. Danny didn't respond. He was still locked on the scope, his whole body tense in a way I'd never seen before. His breathing had changed. Faster. Shallow. Danny? Contact, he said into the radio. Enemy convoy, Highway 1, grid reference. Wait, that's... The javelin's launch sequence initiated. The missile ejected from the tube with that distinctive pop, motor igniting, arcing up and then down in its top attack profile. I watched it happen like it was slow motion, watched the missile track toward our guys, opened my mouth to scream something, anything. The lead Humvee exploded, just came apart. The fireball was massive, rolling black smoke and debris scattering across the highway. The supply truck swerved, rolled, and came to rest on its side. The second Humvee tried to evade but caught the edge of the blast. I could see figures moving, then not moving. My ears were ringing, or maybe that was just the silence between us. What did you do? I couldn't recognize my own voice. Danny was already on the radio. Contact, contact. Engaged enemy convoy, Highway 1, multiple vehicles hit, QRF needed immediately. Danny, those were our guys. That was 4th Platoon. He turned to me then. His face was white. Not shocked, not horrified. Something else. Something calculated. Insurgents, he said quietly. That was an insurgent convoy. I saw the vehicles. Those were insurgents. Harder this time. Insurgents. You saw insurgents in stolen Humvees. It's happened before. You know it has. He was right about that part. Taliban had captured vehicles before, used them to get close, launch attacks. But I'd been watching that convoy. I'd seen the interval spacing, the way they moved. That was trained driving. That was us. Marcus, Danny grabbed my shoulder. Listen to me very carefully. What we just engaged was hostile. Confirmed hostile. You understand? How did you confirm? Because if it wasn't hostile, what I just did was unforgivable. You want to live with that? You want me to live with that? The quick reaction force arrived within minutes. I watched from the ridge as they secured the scene, watched them load bodies into bags, counted them. 6 black bags. 6 guys who'd woken up that morning thinking they'd be back for evening chow. Captain Morrison pulled us aside when we got back to base. He was alone, no other officers present. That should have been my first warning. I need to know exactly what happened up there. Danny gave his report.
Enemy convoy, positive identification, weapons free, engaged with javelin, confirmed hits. His voice never wavered. He'd always been good under pressure. That's why they'd given him the javelin in the first place. Morrison turned to me. Sergeant Chen, confirm? I looked at Danny. He was staring straight ahead, but I could see the tension in his jaw, could see the way his hands were clenched behind his back.
I thought about what he'd said on that ridge, about what living with this would mean, about the fact that nothing I said would bring those guys back anyway. "Confirmed, sir," I heard myself say. "Hostile convoy. Sergeant Webb's assessment was correct." Morrison nodded slowly. "Good. The investigation team will want statements, but keep it simple. What you saw, what you engaged, what the result was. Nothing complicated." "Sir," I said, "how did we not know 4th Platoon's schedule?" "There was a communications breakdown. They left Kandahar early, didn't update their departure time. We had intelligence suggesting insurgents were moving stolen vehicles in that area. Multiple failures led to a tragic mistake." So they knew. Morrison knew, and he was helping bury it. "The families will be told their loved ones were taken during an ambush, enemy action. They'll receive full honors. This stays between us." That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept seeing that missile track, kept seeing the fireball. I found Danny in the smoke pit at 0200, sitting alone. "Why?" I asked. He didn't pretend not to understand. "I saw weapons." "What?" "Through the javelin sight. I saw RPGs, heavy weapons, mounted on the supply truck." He took a long drag from his cigarette. "Except they weren't on the supply truck. They were pointed at a compound about 300 meters east of the highway." I sat down. "You're not making sense." "There was another convoy. Afghan National Police vehicles coming from the opposite direction. They were going to pass each other right at that junction, and that compound had elevated positions, perfect firing point. If those ANA cops got hit—" "Wait," I was trying to piece it together. "You saw 4th Platoon and you saw a threat to—" "I saw weapons trained on what was about to be a massacre. 40, maybe 50 Afghan police, families, guys we'd been training for months. Taliban had them zeroed in, waiting for the perfect moment. So I had maybe 10 seconds to decide. Take out the threat before they could engage, or let it happen. But taking out the threat meant—" He gestured vaguely toward the highway. "Our guys were in the direct line of fire, between me and that compound. I couldn't shoot past them." The cigarette trembled in his hand. First time I'd seen him shake. "You took out 4th Platoon to save the ANA convoy. I took out the insurgent position before they could engage. Our guys they were in the wrong place. The communications failure, the early departure, all of it. Wrong place, wrong time." Before I tell you what I discovered next, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you are listening from. The official investigation took 3 days. I gave my statement to a full-bird colonel who barely looked at me. "Yes, sir, hostile convoy, positive identification, justified engagement." He nodded, typed notes, dismissed me. Danny got the Bronze Star 2 weeks later. Valor in combat, decisive action under pressure, neutralized a significant enemy threat. I watched him accept it and wanted to scream. But what would I scream? That he'd made an impossible choice? That 6 of our own had passed because he'd saved 40 Afghans? That the cover-up was necessary because the alternative, admitting we'd fired on ourselves, would have destroyed morale and international relations? I tried to move on, focus on my job, count down the days until I could rotate home. But it aided me. Every time I saw Danny, every time someone mentioned 4th Platoon, every time I thought about those 6 families being told their sons and husbands had fallen to enemy fire. 2 months after it happened, I was in the TOC pulling radio watch when I overheard Captain Morrison talking to the intelligence officer. They didn't know I was in the back corner, hidden behind equipment racks. "The timeline's still bothering me," the intelligence officer said. How did Webb identify the threats so fast? Training, good instincts. Maybe, but the ANA convoy didn't show up on any of our tracking. No advance notice, no coordination. Webb somehow knew they'd be at that exact junction at that exact time. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we should look at what Webb was actually looking at through that sight. My blood went cold. The investigation is closed, Morrison said. I know, but if there's any chance he saw what he claimed to see, shouldn't we verify? The tactical feed from that javelin should still be. The feed was corrupted. Technical malfunction. It happens. Does it? Or was it corrupted after the fact? Morrison's voice went hard. Major, you need to decide if you want a career or not, because what you're implying would destroy a lot of people, good people, and it wouldn't bring anyone back. The conversation ended. I stayed hidden until they left, my heart hammering. The feed was corrupted intentionally, which meant either Danny had lied about what he saw or Morrison had buried evidence of exactly how impossible Danny's decision had been. I needed to know which. Getting access to the corrupted feed wasn't easy, but I'd been working comms long enough to know where backups lived. Systems had redundancies. 3 days of careful access to the server room, one sympathetic IT specialist who owed me a favor, and I had a copy of what was left of the tactical feed. It was degraded but not completely gone. Bits and pieces. Enough. I watched it on a laptop in my hooch at 0300, headphones on, door locked. The feed showed what Danny had been looking at through the Javelin sight. The highway, the approaching convoy. And yes, I could see them now. Our Humvees, our markings. Danny would have known, had to have known. The sight tracked right, away from the highway, panned across open desert to a compound, zoomed in, and there, figures on the roof, weapons, an RPG team setting up, a heavy machine gun already positioned. They were tracking something, their weapons trained north on the approach road. The ANA convoy wasn't visible yet, but the insurgent firing positions were clear. This wasn't preparation, this was imminent action. 30 seconds, maybe less, before they'd open fire. The feed cut out. 2 seconds later, the timestamp showed the launch. I sat there staring at the screen, rewound it, watched again. The thermal signature was unmistakable. That truck was a bomb, rolling toward Fob Wilderness, protected by 2 Humvees that had no idea what they were escorting. Danny hadn't just stopped an ambush on the ANA convoy. He'd stopped a truck bomb from reaching our base. A bomb big enough to take out half the fire base. A bomb being carried by our own guys who'd been compromised somehow, somewhere between Kandahar and that highway. The Taliban hadn't stolen our vehicles, they'd turned them into a weapon. Now here's where everything changed, but real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I'd genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach. I found Danny the next morning, pulled him aside to an empty corner of the fire base. I saw the feed, I said. His face didn't change. There is no feed. It was corrupted. I saw what was left of it, the thermal signature. That truck was carrying... I know what it was carrying. He looked around, made sure we were alone. You shouldn't have gone looking for that. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell me? Because Morrison made a choice, and it was the right choice. How is covering this up the right... Think about it, Marcus. Really think. If the truth came out that our own supply convoy had been compromised, that Taliban had infiltrated our logistics network enough to turn one of our trucks into a bomb, that they almost took out an entire fire base, what happens? I hadn't thought about it, not really. Investigation, security changes, panic, complete breakdown of trust in the supply chain. Every convoy becomes suspect. Every vehicle could be a bomb. We stop moving supplies, we stop operating. We hole up on bases waiting for the next threat from inside our own network. Taliban win without firing another shot. But those families think their loved ones were taken by the enemy, which is true. just not the way they think. Danny's jaw was tight. The men in that convoy had no idea what they were carrying. Somebody intercepted them, modified the cargo, sent them on their way. They were victims. And if I'd let them complete that run, 400 people on this firebase would have joined them. So Morrison knew from the beginning? Morrison figured it out fast enough, looked at the crater, saw what was left of that truck, did the math. He had a choice: launch an investigation that would have exposed how compromised we were, or classify it as a tragic mistake and quietly fix the actual security breach. Did they fix it? 3 Afghan interpreters and 1 supply clerk were arrested 6 days later. CIA took them. I don't know where. Morrison told me that once and never mentioned it again. The supply chain got overhauled, new protocols, random inspections. It hasn't happened since. I leaned against the wall. Everything I thought I understood was wrong. Why give you a medal? Danny laughed, bitter. Because what I did, even if nobody can ever know the real reason, saved a lot of lives. And because Morrison wanted to make sure I stayed quiet. Hard to accuse your command of a cover-up when they've just pinned a bronze star on you. The families can never know, ever. Because if they know, everyone knows. And if everyone knows, every mother and father and wife back home starts wondering if their soldier isn't just fighting the enemy, they're carrying bombs built by the enemy without knowing it. You want to live with that? I didn't have an answer. Danny gripped my shoulder. You weren't supposed to see that feed, but now you have, so you need to decide, same as I did, same as Morrison did. You carry this, or you let it destroy everything. He walked away, left me standing there with the weight of it. I spent the next month trying to justify it, telling myself that Morrison and Danny had made the right call, that sometimes the truth did more harm than good, that those 6 guys would have passed anyway when that truck exploded, along with hundreds more. But I kept thinking about the families, about the memorial service where men gave speeches about heroism and sacrifice, about the folded flags and the tears and the honor guard. All of it built on a lie. I need to tell you what happened next, but first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. My tour ended 3 months later. I rotated home to Fort Campbell, processed out of the Army 6 weeks after that. I'd planned to do 20 years, but I couldn't anymore. Not carrying this. Danny stayed in, made staff sergeant, got stationed in Germany. We didn't talk much after I left Afghanistan. What was there to say? I tried civilian life, got a job doing logistics for a shipping company, got an apartment, tried to build something normal. But normal felt like a lie, too. Everything felt like a lie. The nightmares started around month 4. Not of combat, of that thermal signature, of watching that truck roll toward a firebase full of people who had no idea, of the moment before the missile hit when I knew and they didn't. I started drinking. Not a lot at first, just enough to sleep, then enough to get through evenings, then enough to function at all. Classic veteran story, right? But I couldn't explain to anyone why. Couldn't tell a therapist or a friend or a VA counselor because the story was classified, buried, gone. A year after I got home, Danny called. First time in months. You okay? He asked. Fine. I know you're not fine. I'm not fine either. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you understand why we did what we did. I need to hear that somebody else gets it. I understand. The words felt hollow. Doesn't make it easier. No, it doesn't. He was quiet for a long moment. Morrison retired last month, medical discharge, PTSD. Couldn't handle carrying it anymore. Great, so we all get to fall apart slowly? Maybe. Or maybe we accept that we made the least bad choice in an impossible situation, that those 6 families got to grieve heroes instead of victims of friendly fire, that 400 people went home to their families because we kept our mouths shut. You ever wonder if we made the wrong call? Every day, but I can't unmake it. Neither can you. He hung up. I sat there with my phone, staring at nothing. Thought about those families again, about what they believed versus what was true, about whether protecting them from the truth was mercy or just another lie we told to protect ourselves. And I realized something. The cover-up hadn't protected those families. It had protected us. Protected the military from embarrassment and scandal and difficult questions, protected our commanders from investigations, protected guys like me from having to admit we'd watched it happen and stayed silent. We'd dressed it up as nobility, but it was just cowardice. I made a decision that night. Maybe not the right decision, but the only one I could live with. I started writing. Not for publication, not for exposure, just to get it out. Every detail, every conversation, every moment from that ridge to the cover-up to the corrupted feed. I wrote it like I'm telling you now, honest, complete. Took me 3 months. When I finished, I had 60 pages. A confession, really. Maybe my only honest act since coming home. I sent a copy to Danny. Didn't hear back for 2 weeks. Then my phone rang at midnight. "What the hell are you doing?" He sounded furious, scared. "I'm not publishing it. I'm not sending it to reporters. I needed it to exist, somewhere." Why? Because those families deserve to know their sons and husbands didn't get ambushed by insurgents. They stopped a truck bomb. They saved 400 lives just by being in the wrong place at the right time. That's not a tragedy. That's heroism, real heroism. And they'll never know. You can't. I won't. But it's written down now. The truth exists. And when I pass, or when you pass, or when enough time has gone by that it doesn't matter anymore, maybe someone finds it. Maybe those families finally learn what actually happened. Or maybe they don't. But it won't be lost. It won't be like it never happened. Danny was quiet for a long time. "You're going to get court-martialed." "I'm out. They can't touch me for writing down what I remember." "They'll find a way." "Maybe, but I can sleep now. First time in a year." He hung up without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note in Danny's handwriting. "My account. Add it to yours. Burn this note." I read his version. It was different from mine. More technical, more detailed about the tactical situation, but the core was the same. What happened, why it happened, and what we did about it. 2 versions of the same truth, written by the only 2 people who knew all of it. I stored both files in a safe deposit box, added instructions that it should be opened and the contents released 25 years after my passing, long enough that most of the people involved would be gone, long enough that it couldn't hurt careers or active operations, long enough that it would just be history. The nightmares stopped, not completely, but enough. I got sober, started working with other veterans, guys struggling with things they couldn't talk about. I never told them my story, but I understood theirs in a way most people couldn't. Sometimes you carry truth that nobody wants to hear. Sometimes staying quiet is its own kind of wound. Danny and I talked more after that. Not often, but regularly. He stayed in the Army, made Sergeant First Class, did 2 more deployments. He never got another medal. Turned down a Silver Star recommendation once. Morrison's replacement wanted to honor him for something routine, and Danny couldn't stomach accepting another piece of metal for a lie. He got out in 2018, married a teacher from Tennessee, has 2 kids now, works private security. We talk maybe once a month. Never about Kandahar. Don't have to. Morrison passed in 2020. Heart attack. Danny and I went to the funeral, stood in the back, didn't say much. His widow thanked us for coming, had no idea we were there because her husband had helped bury a secret that was eating all of us alive. The 4th Platoon still think their loved ones were ambushed. Every year on the anniversary, they post tributes on social media. taken by cowards who wouldn't face them in a fair fight. Gone but never forgotten. Heroes to the end. They're right about the last part, but they'll never know how right. I'm 38 now, 6 years removed from the army, 5 years sober, trying to build something that looks like a normal life. I work, I volunteer, I show up for people when they need me. And I live with the knowledge that 6 men passed to save hundreds, and the world thinks it was meaningless tragedy instead of the most meaningful sacrifice any of them could have made. That's the cost, I guess. We gave those families the comfort of believing their loved ones went down fighting. We protected them from knowing those men were carrying a bomb meant to wipe out a base. We let them believe in heroes and honor and sacrifice. And we took that weight ourselves, all of us. Morrison carried it until it broke him. Danny carries it every time he looks at his kids and wonders if he did right. I carry it every time I see those anniversary posts. The truth is stored in a safe deposit box, waiting. Maybe someone will care when it finally comes out. Maybe they won't. Maybe by then it'll just be another footnote in a long war that most people want to forget. But it'll be there, the real story, what actually happened on that ridge in Kandahar, why 6 good men are gone, why the truth was worth burying, why the lie was necessary. I learned something from all this. Took me years to figure it out, but I got there eventually. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just gives you a different cage. Morrison chose his cage and it finished him. Danny chose his and built a life inside it. I chose mine and found a way to live with it. But here's what keeps me up sometimes, even now. Those 6 families think they know what happened. They've grieved, moved on, built lives around that grief. If the truth came out tomorrow, would it help them? Would knowing their loved ones stopped a truck bomb make the loss hurt less? Or would it just be one more betrayal, one more lie to add to all the others? I don't know. I tell myself we did the right thing, protecting them from knowing. But maybe that's just another lie I tell myself so I can sleep. The memorial for 4th Platoon is still at Fort Campbell. I visited it once after I got sober. 6 names on polished stone. Dates, ranks. Killed in action, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. I stood there for an hour. Didn't pray, didn't cry, just stood there with the weight of what I knew and what they'd never know. A woman approached, older, maybe 60. She was carrying flowers. "Did you know them?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I served with them." "My son, Thomas Reeves. He was driving that 2nd Humvee." She placed the flowers at the base. "They told us it was quick, that he didn't suffer. Do you think that's true?" I looked at her, at the hope in her eyes that her son's last moments hadn't been full of pain and fear, at the need for something good to hold on to. "Ma'am," I said, "your son died protecting his brothers. That's all any soldier can ask for." It was true, just not the way she thought. She thanked me, walked away, left me standing there with 6 names and the truth I'd never tell. That's how this story ends. Not with revelation or justice or closure, just with carrying it, day after day, year after year, until enough time passes that maybe it stops mattering who knew what and when. Danny texted me last week. His daughter asked him about his Bronze Star, wanted to know what he did to earn it. He told her he made a hard choice under pressure, that sometimes doing the right thing costs you more than you want to pay. She asked if he was a hero. He told her no, said the real heroes were the ones who didn't make it home. He's not wrong, but he's not right either. The truth is more complicated than hero or coward, right or wrong, necessary lie or unconscionable cover-up. The truth is 6 men passed saving 400, and nobody can ever know. The truth is we buried that because the alternative would have caused more damage than the original tragedy. The truth is all of us, Morrison, Danny and me chose to carry that weight so their families wouldn't have to. Was it worth it? I don't know. Ask me again in 25 years when that safe deposit box gets opened and the real story comes out. Maybe by then I'll have an answer, but I doubt it. Some truths don't have answers. They just have consequences, and you either learn to live with them or you don't. I did. Barely, but I did. And every year on that anniversary, I see those posts about fallen heroes and senseless loss and cowardly ambushes, and I think about typing out the truth, about telling them what really happened, about giving them the closure of knowing. But I never do, because Danny was right about one thing. What we did to protect them. And maybe that was selfish. Maybe it was cowardly. Maybe it was the worst kind of betrayal. Or maybe it was the only mercy we had left to give. I guess you'll have to decide that for yourself.